It's like the news, but for nerds. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Nerdvengers, what is up? It is Josh, and this is your Nerdy News Rundown for Thursday, June 3rd, 2021. A couple of juicy things we want to talk about. Avengers Campus being officially launched over in California. And there are also several new things out there about not only the Loki series, but about the future of Phase 4 in general. I want to talk about this Michael Waldron guy who is the writer of the Loki series and the man that took over writing duties for the Multiverse of Madness and is also working on Kevin Feige's Star Wars film. There's a lot of juicy stuff to get in there. But first, let's begin talking about Avengers Campus. We talked about this a little bit earlier on the morning stream, but still, this is a really cool thing for Marvel fans. I know a lot of Marvel fans are pretty hyped up about this. Starting on June 4th, which is tomorrow at Disney California Adventure in Anaheim, Avengers Campus opens. It is a new 6-acre attraction that brings the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to life. And frankly, it looks pretty cool, man. You can not only meet all of the different Avengers characters, including Spider-Man, which is a pretty big deal, and also hints at another just sign of very good things happening between Sony and Disney. Pretty secure in the future of Spider-Man and Marvel. If they wouldn't make this kind of an investment into a park like this unless they had that figured out. And man, it was so cool seeing Paul Rudd himself there, seeing Anthony Mackie show up and give the shield to the Captain America that will be in the park. It was awesome to see Kevin Feige in his element, and we even got to see Jon Favreau there live at the Avengers Campus over in Florida. And frankly, there's a lot of cool things you can experience within the park, including just living in the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, training with the Dora Milaje, or even doing some of the interactive rides that are over there. But on top of that, Kevin Feige made some pretty cool comments about how Avengers Campus will be uniquely positioned to continue to provide thrills and interesting attractions to Marvel fans. Here's a quote from the Variety article covering Avengers Campus and a lot of cool aspects of that Disney park. It says here, for our films, for our shows, we build these elaborate sets, but they're temporary and they only exist on screen, Feige said. But here in a Disney theme park, our sets can be permanent. And the Variety article makes a couple of good points here. They say in the article, in practically the same breath, Kevin Feige shifted gears entirely. One of the things that is most exciting to me is that Avengers Campus will never be completed, he said. It's a living, breathing space that will grow and evolve as our cinematic universe grows and evolves, with new props and new characters assembling here at Avengers HQ. Tom Holland's Peter Parker shows up in the Spidey-centric Web Slingers ride, which uses cutting-edge infrared cameras to allow guests to physically throw webs at a 3D interactive game, but Sony Pictures still owns the film rights to the characters, so all the Spidey costumes and logos are unique just to the Avengers Campus, and while both Black Panther and the Dora Milaje will have a presence in the park, Wakanda doesn't. Instead, the ancient Sanctum area evokes the production design from 2016's Doctor Strange. Now, very interesting details there, the fact that it's uniquely Spider-Man, to the campus over there to get, past some of the copyright problems. The fact that Wakanda isn't there is kind of interesting, and perhaps we'll see changes made over time. I think that's kind of what Kevin Feige was implying with Avengers Campus, and just like with Galaxy's Edge, I expect it to get better and better over time. Now, this comes at a very interesting time for Disney itself, as their theme parks just got the go-ahead to open up over in California, and now this big attraction there is hopefully going to bring a lot of people over there to check it out. I personally would love to go check it out. I probably will go check it out before the end of the year, but it'll be interesting to see how people respond to this park. Is there a huge draw to go there? Does the Marvel Cinematic Universe need to come back in full swing to get people then excited and more excited about Marvel? It's just interesting to see how all of this will be taking place in a post-Pandy world. I'm excited. I hope you're excited, but of course, let us know your thoughts on all the different updates and exciting prospects of the Avengers Campus Marvel theme park over at Disney California. And now let's shift gears into talking about Loki, but really talking about Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and beyond. There's just a huge level of confusion, and I think anticipation still out there for what exactly does Marvel have in store for us for the next couple of years and beyond. And even films like Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and Eternals, although being very hyped and people are excited, they are films that were actually supposed to be happening last year, and it's just kind of interesting that they were supposed to exist in a time before we maybe knew as much as we do now about the possibilities of Marvel's future plan. And that brings us to Loki, and we just did a video that should come out either tomorrow or the next day, a big preview video talking about all the juicy things with regards to Loki, the speculation, the rumors, and also everything that we think will happen in the show. Look for that video very soon. But Kevin Feige just came out in an interview recently and said that he believes that Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston as a team may be one of the best team-ups they have ever had in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I saw this pop up on the direct. It says Marvel boss makes bold prediction about Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson pairing popularity. And reading from the article, it says in a new interview with TV Insider, Tom Hiddleston shared a few details about the relationship between Loki and Agent Mobius, played by Owen Wilson. According to Hiddleston, the character holds the highest academic honors in the studies of Loki, which has been hinted at by the trailers, with moments of him calling Loki out on various aspects of his personality, such as frequently backstabbing others. Wilson himself also commented on his character, explaining that it's a little bit of a chess match to gain Loki's trust, but in that shared endeavor, there's an interesting dynamic. In comparing the dynamic of the two characters to Nick Nolte getting Eddie Murphy out of jail in the 1982 movie 48 Hours. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige commented on the relationship between Loki and Mobius as well, and stated his prediction that the two would become one of the most popular pairings we've ever had at Marvel. Now let's stop there for a second. A couple of cool things in there. The fact that Mobius is an expert on Loki specifically is quite hilarious and adds just a little bit more spice to that flavor, or to that character and the flavor that we can expect to be happening in the show. But this also solidifies a theory that I've had for a long time. Ever since seeing the very first trailer for Loki, man, I started to believe that Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston was actually going to be one of the greatest buddy cop pair-ups we may have seen in cinema in a while, and one of the coolest pair-ups we've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And for Feige to be saying this in a world that we have all these other great actors and pairings, it's very high praise, very exciting stuff, and should get you extra hyped up for Loki. But on top of that, one of the big unspoken things about the Loki series that I think people really need to realize is that this Michael Waldron fellow, this writer that was scooped up from Rick and Morty to come over and write on Loki, and Kevin Feige was so freaking impressed with that he put him on the newly reworked needed script for Doctor Strange 2 in the Multiverse of Madness, and then handpicked this dude to be the writer on his top secret Star Wars project. It just shows that this Waldron dude has the stuff, and Feige found one of the most perfect writers and a matchup for him so that he can basically have the crazy stories he once told leading into his Phase 4 and beyond. And a lot of this comes from an incredible article on Vanity Fair. I highly recommend people go check this out. It's an article titled "How the Man Behind Loki is Shaping Marvel's Phase 4 and Beyond." Now, the article is pretty sprawling. It talks about Waldron's come up in writing, some of his influences, and the very hilarious story about him leaving Rick and Morty to then go work on the Loki show. But I want to talk about a couple of the things that Waldron says in there about Loki, and then I want to talk about his Star Wars movie with Kevin Feige. So when talking about the plot of the show, Waldron says that was the sandbox that we had to play in. I came up with the emotional engine of the whole thing. The fans of Loki watched him experience a character arc through Infinity War, and in a lot of ways, maybe even arc out. How do we break new ground with this character? What better movies and TV TV shows did I intend to rip off in each episode? Marvel itself solved the arc out problem by plucking Loki from earlier in his timeline at the end of 2012's Avengers. Hiddleston's character enters the show a time criminal captured by the TVA who may, in the end, prove its most valuable asset. Loki, the series, presents a less evolved, more mischievous god of mischief, and Waldron considers Hiddleston's versatility in the show the ultimate weapon. The ceiling for Loki felt so high that Waldron was free to draw upon a broad range of films and TV shows to construct Loki's latest journey throughout the MCU. The time and space hopping adventure spirit of Rick and Morty is an obvious inspiration. At first, I was carrying in the Rick and Morty sensibility and I had to recalibrate, he says. I'm not writing a 22-minute cartoon. I was watching Quentin Tarantino movies, Inglourious Bastards, movies that luxuriate in long scenes of dialogue and tension building. Waldron also rattled off some other surprising inspirations, Blade Runner, Before Sunrise, and Catch Me If You Can. But just because he's pulling from cinema doesn't mean Waldron thinks Loki as a 6-hour movie. I'd say it's something totally new. It's MCU. It was important that every episode stood alone. The Leftovers or Watchmen, which I admire so much, every one of those episodes felt like a distinct short story. That's a sign of a great episode of TV. Oh, it's that episode of Loki. Now, let's shift into some of the things that he has said in this very same article about Doctor Strange. Again, he is the writer that took over writing duties and had to create this script for the Doctor Strange sequel after Derrickson left the project. He's quoted as saying, "I knew I wanted to stay in the family. I felt like Loki was in a great place and I was eager for what the next challenge would be." Director Sam Raimi, a longtime hero of Waldron's and someone Feige knows from his early days as producer on Raimi's Spider-Man films, was brought on board a week later to direct. Time was tight. How do we just make a movie in 2 months, Waldron recalls thinking. But COVID quickly descended upon us. We're not shooting now until November, so I got to spend my 2020 on Zooms with Sam Raimi. Not too bad. While acknowledging the foundation Derrickson laid for him, Waldron said he and Raimi started from scratch. Waldron began juggling his Strange duties while still keeping one hand on the wheel of Loki. Oh, and somewhere in there he also scooped up an Emmy for Rick and Morty over Zoom. He put his trust in Huron and fellow Rick and Morty alum, writer Eric Martin, to handle the day-to-day of Loki, while Martin and Waldron would collaborate on any rewrites needed to make the series come together. Okay, so let's stop for a second there before we get into the Star Wars comments and just kind of cool updates about what he had to say about that. I just think that it's a very interesting story of this guy just rising through the ranks, just being noticed by Kevin Feige and being elevated throughout the basically phase 4 writing process, right? He gets kind of slapped onto that thing and he must have just been killing it and also just had great sensibilities for Feige to then handpick him for his Star Wars film as well. So a really cool story, but it's also kind of interesting some of the things he says about the inspiration for the show. I'm getting a vibe that the show may have very long, sprawling dialogue scenes and really be focused on this buddy cop element with Owen Wilson and Loki, and I'm totally okay with that, but maybe if you were expecting all kinds of cosmic craziness every single episode, maybe calibrate back down to, a show that really seems like it's going to be character-driven despite its pretty bombastic setting. Either way, I'm pretty freaking excited for Loki, man. This Michael Waldron guy doing the Loki thing, going into Doctor Strange, and having some connective tissue between all of that and being a sort of protege, in effect, of Kevin Feige gives me a lot of confidence in not only Loki, but Doctor Strange and the whole of Marvel's Phase 4 moving on past this. But now let's talk about the thing that's very near and dear to my heart and also near and dear to Michael Waldron's heart, and that would be the Star Wars movie with Kevin Feige. And before we read some more from this article, I just want to mention that it does say in the article that his love, Michael Waldron's love, of Marvel really comes from the Marvel movies, but he really loves Star Wars. Star Wars was one of his first loves, and that is similar to Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige, the architect of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, has said on record that Star Wars is really his first love, and he tends to like it even more than he likes Marvel, which is crazy. These dudes are both very passionate about Star Wars. And the article reads here, setting sail on a steady ship like Marvel is one thing, but diving into a fractured fandom like Star Wars is a much bigger challenge. Then again, Waldron survived the Rick and Morty Szechuan Sauce Wars of 2017, so anything is possible. I think he can be the guy to really kickstart the cinematic grandeur of those movies. From Disney said, that's probably laying it on a little thick, but I really think he's the guy to do it. Star Wars is definitely sticky because if you make a certain brand of nerd happy, you're actually middle fingering an adjacent breed of nerd, Harmon says. If you take it too seriously, you're doing it wrong. If you don't take it seriously enough, you're definitely doing it wrong. It needs the total joy of the greatest franchise ever, along with a kind of swagger. I do think that Waldron would make a good match for that, but I don't know if he would make a good match for the machine that's carrying that stuff. Then again, this is Feige's Star Wars, and it's not at all difficult to see why these two have forged a successful partnership. Feige and Waldron are both nice guys from the East Coast with wives in the medical field who like action blockbusters from the 80s, have a connection to Nora Ephron, and weren't brought up on comic books. But the parallels run even deeper. Feige and Waldron see stories in a similar way, constantly pushing beloved comic book characters through the lens of their favorite blockbusters like Back to the Future. More crucially, both seem to have mastered the art of being political and ambitious without ever seeming disingenuous. Okay, let's stop there for a second. Very cool comments, and those comments were made by Jeff Loveness, who is the writer of Ant-Man 3. So first of all, it's pretty crazy that Jeff Loveness would even make such comments, sort of low-key disparaging Lucasfilm and the current leadership over there. That's really interesting and possibly leads into some of that stuff we've been hearing about behind the scenes, that there's a little beef between Kathleen Kennedy and the leadership at Lucasfilm and Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios. I don't know if it's real, but it's weird that the writer of Ant-Man 3 is basically like, hey, Star Wars is in a mixed spot, but I love this Waldron guy. I think Michael Waldron could be the guy to do it, but we're not sure if Waldron's swagger would jive with the leadership that's running that ship over there, and that would be Star Wars. But he also says, no, but it's Feige Star Wars. And the implication in the article is even that Feige Star Wars with Waldron behind it would be a totally different thing. And with those two dudes together, they could maybe have enough creative sort of fortitude or leverage to really get what they want done for a Star Wars movie. So this not only means that the Star Wars movie that Kevin Feige is making is still real and being talked about by the trades, but Michael Waldron being such a big get, signing a huge deal with Disney, having such a good relationship with a lot of different writers at Marvel, but being a perfect match for Kevin Feige and his ambitions, makes me really excited for what these two might do for a Star Wars movie. And I hope the fact that we haven't been hearing more about it is just because Kevin Feige is very busy, and they will figure it out, and they will still make that movie. And I'm still hopeful that this movie will set a crazy new precedent for Star Wars, and perhaps, do that thing that the Ant-Man 3 writer is talking about. Do what Loveness is saying, and really bring a swagger that could reinvigorate that love of Star Wars and maybe bring the Star Wars fan base back together. But that's it, guys. Just details about Kevin Feige Star Wars coming out from an article about Michael Waldron, who will be the writer for that Kevin Feige Star Wars movie, is the writer of the Loki series and also wrote on the Multiverse of Madness. Crazy stuff. Let me know what you think about all of it in the comments section below. Make sure you are checking out our live streaming channel where we're going to be doing watch parties for Loki and a ton of streams talking about all the nerdy things that are going on now and that will be going on later in the year. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.